Fellowship of the Broken, Making Sense of 12-Step Recovery by Angelo. Chapter 20. Meditation. Quote, "Once your awareness becomes a flame, it burns up the whole slavery that the mind has created." Close quote, and that's by Osho. This simple quote from Osho sums up the tremendous power of meditation. Once we become aware of how the personal ego identity creates all of our problems, then the old thinking begins to evaporate and is replaced by underlying wisdom. Just as a rising bubble trapped in water disappears when it reaches the surface, so our habitual patterns of thought and behavior recede once they are exposed to the searing clarity of deeper consciousness. Meditation is a major component of all spiritual traditions and has been a recommended practice for thousands of years. In recent times, meditation has become increasingly popular, particularly with the use of mindfulness techniques to address a range of issues, and the availability of digital applications on smartphones and tablets. The key word to consider with regards to meditation is practice. If we wish to learn to play a musical instrument, we would start with the basics and then practice on a regular basis, gradually improving our skill and ability over a period of time. Early practice would be quite challenging, but gradually our technique would develop. Eventually we would reach a level of competence where playing would come naturally, and we would most likely want to continue to practice for pleasure and enjoyment. My experience of meditation has been much the same. The personal ego mind is always looking for a result from its efforts, and this can cause us to become disappointed with meditation long before it bears fruit. Meditation starts out as a specific activity, but gradually becomes a way of being. The suggestion, therefore, is to practice and to keep practicing, both in good times and difficult times, in quiet times and busy times. Sooner or later, your own experience will extinguish any lingering doubts about the power of meditation. It is the gateway to a transformation in thinking and behavior. The next important idea to reflect upon is that the primary purpose of meditation is to detach from the personal ego mind and then be able to witness it from a deeper level. Using our model of consciousness, this would mean letting go of the personal human mind and retreating initially to a position of witness or spiritual being. It's then possible to go further towards universal mind when it becomes apparent that the spiritual witness can itself be witnessed. The primary purpose of meditation can sometimes be overlooked if too much focus is placed on a specific tradition or technique. It's also tempting to stay at the first witness level rather than allowing ourselves to go deeper. Thoughts will continue to arise, which is not necessarily a bad thing, provided that the attention remains as an observer rather than identifying as the thinker. Potential levels of meditation overlap with self-contemplation, which we will cover in the next chapter. One way to describe the overall inner journey would be firstly to observe thoughts, images, feelings, sensations and perceptions, and begin to notice that there is a silent witness within. Secondly, to identify with the inner witness rather than the observed personal ego mind. Thirdly, to spend time as the inner witness and let go of anything else that arises. Fourthly, to come to realize that there is an awareness of the personal inner witness. Fifthly, to identify with the impersonal pure awareness or consciousness rather than the personal inner witness. And sixthly, to spend time as impersonal awareness or consciousness and let go of everything else. And finally, to let go of consciousness itself and identify as source emptiness. These levels imply a progression of our practice, which they can be, but my experience has been that the level experienced on any given day will vary. Just as the quality of practice on a musical instrument varies from day to day, so too does meditation. It's important to accept that there's no such thing as success or failure in meditation. It's the practice that counts, rather than any specific momentary outcome. Meditation practices and techniques take many seemingly different forms, but each is ultimately intended to bring about access to deeper levels of universal mind. When we first begin to try meditation, it is the personal self that undertakes the practice. This stage can last many years, but eventually the objective is to abide as awareness. It is not the person that has the meditative experience, but rather it is the absence of the personal ego mind that brings about an enhanced awareness of consciousness or being. This is a broad subject, and I can only share my understanding of the various practices that I have tried. This is not an exhaustive study, nor does it suggest that any particular practice is either right or wrong, better or worse. My suggestion would be to experiment and see what works best for each of us individually. Mindfulness has its origins in Buddhism and makes use of focus on bodily sensations as its main subject of awareness, although it can be used in any day-to-day activity. Awareness shifts internally by focusing on activities such as breathing, scanning different parts of the body, chewing, tasting, and walking. This simple focus on everyday bodily feelings is surprisingly effective and can be expanded to include regular activities such as brushing our teeth or cooking. Regular practice brings a more mindful experience of our daily life and continually brings us into the present moment, which, of course, is the only point of access to deeper levels of consciousness. Guided meditations are a form of inner journey narrated by a teacher using visualizations, narratives, or instructions, and can be practiced either in groups or individually. These can be experienced live or, more typically, via various forms of digital media. There is an abundance of meditation tools available on the internet, much of it at little or no cost. Some of them use a binaural beat technology that lowers brainwave frequency and induces deeper levels of consciousness. This is similar to the techniques used in guided hypnosis. Others simply offer relaxing music as a way of focusing attention. Much of this can be downloaded to a portable device and hence available to use at a convenient time during the day. Mantra singing or chanting is a form of meditation that I've found to be effective and enjoyable. As well as the deep breathing and focus needed, there's also a suggestion that the chanting of specific words or phrases, particularly in the language of Sanskrit, induce helpful vibrations that take us deeper in consciousness. Silent sitting simply involves taking time out to sit quietly and bring focused attention to a specific object or sound, or to do nothing at all. Some traditions suggest specific postures to allow the movement of energies that raise the individual vibration. Meditation does not require austerity or isolation. In many respects, there is advantage in practicing meditation in groups because the collective vibration can benefit everyone present. Tribal cultures use dance and rhythmic drumming to induce trance-like meditative states, often led by shamans or spiritual leaders. Likewise, the whirling dervishes from the Mevlevi order of the Sufi tradition spin and dance in order to deepen the connection to spirit. The practice of yoga covers a wide range of meditative disciplines. The word yoga is Sanskrit and literally means union. Yoga originated in ancient India and covers a range of physical, mental and spiritual practices. There are a wide variety of schools and disciplines found in Hinduism and Buddhism. All of them are intended to bring about union with universal mind, which is another way of describing the desired shift in balance from human to being that brings about transformation. Karma Yoga is the discipline of selfless action. The persistent practice of right feeling and attitude towards others purifies the ego mind and leads to the gradual dissolution of the selfish personal ego. It's clear to see how this practice will help us move from ego mind to universal mind. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of devotion to source consciousness. It's based on surrender by the separate personal ego self to one of the many avatars that have been created by humanity, or indeed to our own conception of spirit. Devotion may take the form of love, worship, piety, or any other feeling or action that acknowledges the underlying reality of consciousness, awareness, knowingness, universal mind, spirit, or being. Again, this practice obviously moves the practitioner along the spectrum of balance from selfish mind to selfless universal mind. Jnana Yoga is the path of self-realization or knowledge. This path seeks transformation through deepening our understanding of the true nature of reality. Understanding arises from non-personal universal mind, and hence wisdom leads us towards union with universal mind itself. As wisdom grows, so the separate personal self is seen to be secondary to the unity of consciousness, and it gradually loses its influence. Reading this book falls into the category of Jnana Yoga. Hatha Yoga is the version of yoga that has been popularized in the West. It includes a variety of styles that incorporate yoga postures, also known as asanas, and breathing exercises called pranayama. These disciplines bring peace to the mind and body and are a good preparation for the deeper spiritual practice of meditation. There can be a personal tendency to focus on yoga mats, lycra, looking good and feeling relaxed, but the real purpose of Hatha Yoga is union with consciousness or spirit. And Raja Yoga is referred to as the highest yoga or royal yoga. This form of yoga is also known as Ashtanga Yoga and comprises 8 limbs, of which meditation is chief. The 8 practices cover 1. Behavioral restraints, 2. Observances such as purity, contentment, austerity and study, 3. A steady pose, 4. Control of vital energy, 5. Withdrawal of the senses, 6. Concentration, 7. Meditation with eyes open, and 8. The state of samadhi, which means dissolution into consciousness. The combination of these aspects of Raja Yoga provide a powerful impetus for the transformation from the personal ego self to non-personal universal mind. Prayer is also a form of meditation. We typically see prayer and meditation as two separate activities, but they are simply different forms of the same practice. Prayer is a petition from the personal ego mind for the surrender of itself to consciousness. We may pray with gratitude, or for guidance, willingness, honesty, or grace. Or we may simply pray to be relieved from the constraints of our own minds. Whatever our request may be, it is the sincerity and intensity of the prayer that makes the difference, rather than the precise wording. A heartfelt prayer in a moment of crisis can produce an immediate shift in the balance between human and being. Such shifts are, however, often only temporary. If viewed only from the perspective of the personal ego mind, then prayer can be seen to be an exercise in communicating from ego mind to universal mind, whereas meditation would be in the nature of ego mind receiving guidance or synchronicity from universal mind. However, as the shift continues, we find that prayer increasingly becomes a communion with universal mind, or an abidance in spirit. In this respect, it can be seen that proficient prayer is working in the same way as meditation. It's all about union with consciousness. All of these meditative practices, prayers, and types of yoga are far more effective when undertaken in groups rather than alone. Consciousness is ever present, and resonance tells us that vibrations will harmonize. If we are regularly at gatherings in the presence of human beings with a higher vibration, or in other higher vibrational environments in the natural world, then our own vibration will inevitably rise. And likewise, if we practice meditation, prayer, or types of yoga in groups, then we will be better placed to harmonize at a higher level. Even better, if these groups gather in locations where consciousness is already vibrating at a level closer to universal mind than to human mind. Meditation, yoga, and prayer cover a vast array of disciplines and practices, but they are all intended to lead us to the same objective. The journey starts with the personal ego self engaging in one or more of these disciplines, but as the balance shifts and wisdom emerges, then the practices should become more refined. If we keep growing and changing, then eventually we will come to abide in happiness, peace, love, and unity. The metamorphosis will produce a unique butterfly, and the cycle of life will be complete. The human will still be alive, but the previous personal hellish experience will be transformed into non-personal heaven. Meditation, yoga, and prayer are progressive practices. The ultimate meditation is to live life grounded in non-personal consciousness, and the ultimate yoga is dissolution into spirit. The ultimate prayer is silence.